Okay, Troy's question is up next. He says, what are the signs that one can let up on one's savings rate? Is it age, accumulation level, confidence about your retirement number? Maybe you've hit fire coast, quote unquote. I'd love to let up a little in our life at some point. How should he think about this?
Brian,
This is an interesting question. So this is definitely somebody who's much more well off. And as you progress, generally speaking, folks start thinking about their net worth or their investments or their general financial stability and security. So you first think about debt and trying to alleviate that debt. Then basically once you hit like the break even point or the kind of net worth zero area, then you can start thinking about progressing beyond that. So this question is more for folks who have gone well beyond this point, who are definitely at least in a positive net worth. Maybe they have a good amount and they're trying to figure out how much they have and how much do they have to keep pushing for their savings. So maybe for retirement or for some other purposes. And so this is definitely somebody who's in a better spot. But sometimes this can be something folks run into, which is, I believe historically, the savings rate for Americans is extraordinarily low. Like it's low compared to other countries, other developed countries. I believe in the last year or so, it's been just shy of 3%, if I'm recalling correctly. And historically, it's not that great. It's maybe 4%, give or take, somewhere in that 2 to 5 range. And so it did hike up shortly for COVID times, but then has dropped down below that average by quite a bit again, I think sub 3%. So most people, you should probably be saving a good chunk of your salary for retirement purposes or for emergency purposes. But this is an individual who might be saving way more than that and is trying to figure out how much they should save going forward.
this is somewhat of a specialty of yours. And I'd be curious because Troy's question was, hey, what are some signs that I could let up? And I think it'd be interesting to answer, what are some signs that I could? And then what are some signs that I should? Because those are two different things. What would you say to that, and how are the conversations?
Well, I want to give the precursor because I know a lot of you are financial mutants and you're catching this at a young age, which is an awesome thing. And you guys, by the way, are all. I'm always amazed when you share what you make, what you're saving. But I do want to caution all my people, all my folks that are in your 20s. You know, you billionaires of time. You know, even if you have a great income and a great savings rate, it's kind of hard to take your foot off of what you're doing because you just haven't had enough time for traction to catch hold. You know, because remember, we're trying to get you to that bowling point of trying to get to $100,000 as fast as you possibly can. But I want to go beyond that because I think that's where Troy is trying to get us. But I did. Oh my God! Is this the first time we've previewed it live?
No, first time I've seen it though. It's awesome.
It shows up here, but so let's go beyond the 20-somethings who are crushing it. But I just don't want them to have that overconfidence. I want to focus on. And by the way, this is such a major question that we actually created a course and a tool called Know Your Number. Because you need to, what I'm going to share with you is you need to know, are you ahead of the curve? Are you behind the curve? Or were you right where you need to be? And I like how Bo set that up is because it's not uncommon for us financial mutants to love when you see your money starting to save more than you can save and it's starting to work harder than you can with your back, your brain, and your hands. You can do too much to the point that your family starts going, why are we still piling all six of us in one hotel room? Why are we driving around in a 15-year-old car that, you know, smokes and I have to carry around a quart of oil to pour in there?
Why am I turning in receipts after every meal?
Yeah, why are you making me track every receipt and give you an accounting of this? It's starting to cause some marital strife.
So they're starting to cover some of the key areas. So I think from what I've heard so far, number one, they've highlighted, especially if you're younger, they mostly highlighted 20s, that you probably shouldn't be taking your foot off the gas, so to speak, on your savings. And to elaborate on that point a little bit more, I think one of the things that they said is it's hard to know what the future is going to be like at that point you have so much of your life ahead of you. And I think a big reason for it is usually how much you need to save is based off of your expenses. But if you're in your 20s, you might not have hit your full expense steady state at that point. Like maybe you're still renting, maybe you're still at home, you are probably not having kids yet or not married yet. You probably haven't hit your peak earning years or your peak title, or maybe you're still figuring out what you're going to be doing. Maybe you're still in college, depending on what age this is. And so you're not going to know exactly how much you need to spend, and how much you spend is one of the best indicators for how much you need to save. And so it's going to be really hard to know upfront. And the other key thing that early on, if you're in your 20s or younger, and this is still true for older folks as well in that category, which I still highly recommend saving if you're over 20 years old. I would expect most people to save most of their lives. Is that because of compound interest, the money that you save in your 20s is more valuable than money that you save in your 30s or 40s or 50s. And that is still relative. So it depends on how long you plan to live or how long you plan to work, those types of things. And so if you plan to be working quite some time into your later years, then savings in your 30s will act effectively the same thing as savings in your 20s, etc. But you have so much time for it to compound, so every dollar you put in is so much more valuable than dollars you save later on. And so I would definitely encourage folks, if you're on the younger side, definitely in your 20s, to save as much as you possibly can. This could give you opportunities to pay off your student loans. This could give you opportunities to save up for like a house for a down payment. Maybe it helps you get a car. Whatever those things are, it will likely help set you up for your future. And so the sooner you can kind of get over these initial hurdles, the better for you. But when you go into the later years, you will have a better sense of what your spending's like, what the lifestyle is that you want to live, and then that will inform how much you need to save, and you can go from there. The second point that they're making is you're potentially overdoing it. And again, they seem to be kind of highlighting folks who I'm generally guessing is going to be a little bit older. I think most people nowadays have kids in their 30s, I think is the average age, if I'm not mistaken. And so for these individuals, you're already out of school, presumably, you've had some years behind you, and they're even highlighting taking kids. They even mentioned multiple kids. So this is probably somebody that they're referencing maybe in their later 30s, maybe even 40s, who would have the opportunity to be married, have a family, have a plethora of children. And so at this point, you probably have a good sense of how much you need to save, and you know how much savings you currently have. So you can make some adjustments here. And again, you should hopefully be trying to spend some money such that like your family is comfortable. The entire point of money hopefully should be to have some type of luxury over time. And so this might be a point where this is a signal to kind of take a step back. But I wouldn't necessarily use all complaints from family as necessarily an appropriate sign to step back your savings rates. Again, because the average American saves, even over the last few decades, less than 5%, except for the COVID year. And so that means most of us are drastically under investing or under saving. I think most numbers, if you start in your 20s, like your early 20s, I think a classic number is about 15% if you're in your early 20s and you maintain that rate throughout your lifespan. And so if the average American is sub 5%, then that obviously means there's a pretty sizable gap for you. And what the average American is going to believe is the appropriate amount of savings is likely misleading, because it well underrepresents what should be happening for you to actually be able to securely retire, live comfortably throughout your life, be prepared for emergencies, things like that.
These things are all symptoms that you might have taken Financial Mutant into Financial Miser. So that's why I will tell you, you've got to do the math. You've got to do the homework. I give you all the steps But there is too much. And it's when you start getting into that miser territory, without a doubt, please know your number so that you can figure out exactly where you are. But also, I want to caution, I do want you to feel like get that money in there, bedazzle your basic life so that you're not celebrating too early, because I often do worry when people are looking for the exits on their saving and their automatic investment behavior too soon. Where does that excess money go to? It usually goes into consumption, it goes into lifestyle. And if you go into retirement or what you perceive as financial independence and you weren't realistic about your assumptions and your spending, your burn rate, you can get yourself in a pickle of a situation. So there is a delicate balance, and that's why we try to give you the tools so that you could actually navigate this well.
So you have to do the homework to know where you are on the path. And you have to be realistic and honest to yourself. I think you started this at the very beginning. You said, hey, if you're someone who's in your 20s and you've done the math of, oh man, I've saved up X number of dollars, and if I drop my savings rate to 10%, by the time I get to 65, I would be golden. That may be a little premature. That you may be making that assessment too early. There are other ways that you can enjoy the here and now without allowing your savings to be sacrificed. Am I hearing you and understanding that correctly?
Yeah, and I know, and this might not be Troy, but it might be some of our other audience members. You read Millionaire Mission, you watch our content, and you're on fire about building wealth. But then you fund your Roth, you set up an automatic monthly investment. You're doing 6% to your 401k or whatever at the time. But then you don't look at it again for 5 years, 10 years. And meanwhile, you get promotions, you get pay raises. Make sure you're taking an active role in your financial life, because I don't want this to be you were super excited at 24 years of age, you fast forward to 30, and you never changed your savings rate, you never updated your life. You need to be an active participant in your future success.
That's great.
Yeah, one thing worth calling out about these folks for the Money Guy show, both of them are financial advisors, or at least the two male individuals in that group. And so some of their content, I would say, isn't necessarily as exciting as something like a Caleb Hammer or maybe a Dave Ramsey, but it is useful to know that your information is coming from somebody who is knowledgeable and potentially in the industry. And it's hard to tell on this type of stuff when you're just on YouTube or on social media or something else, because there could be somebody who has no financial background, maybe isn't even good at savings themselves, who's trying to give you financial advice. So I do recommend these guys. That's the Money Guy show. You can get good advice from them, generally speaking, from what I've observed. But thank you for watching. And if you like what you saw, please hit like or subscribe. I will see you around.